Okay, so I've got something that I really want to talk about. So I'm setting expectations so everybody knows what I'm looking for on the mentorship. Because it's one thing me just teaching you, but there's a better way than just teaching. So now that we've kind of built up that little bit of trust, now that you've seen how I teach, it's time to take it to the next level. So just imagine this: if you walk into any martial arts dojo, and again, why am I talking about martial arts? Because I feel because it's what I know so well, there's so many principles that apply to everything that we do. So just imagine walking into that martial arts dojo, and if you are watching what happens within that, you'll see the instructor demonstrates a technique, and then everybody drills it. So it's not the instructor drilling it while everybody watches. It's not everybody drilling it while the instructor watches. It's kind of everyone at once on the mat together. And then the instructor just moves through the room. They adjust the hip, they correct a shoulder, they watch how each student's version of the move is different, but they'll also call out any patterns as they emerge within that group. So the room learns as a room, not as 30 isolated individuals just sharing a floor. Then when the drilling's done its work, the dojo sees something different. People start to spar. One student steps into the middle, another student steps in with them. Maybe it's the instructor, maybe it's a higher level student, and everybody else watches while real exchanges happen. So they're applying what they've learned, but it's controlled, it's safe, but there is a element of pressure there. So the watching students learn as much as the sparring students, because seeing somebody else's guard drop, for example, under pressure teaches you, well, when I'm under pressure, maybe I don't want my guard to drop. And regularly, the dojo does one more thing, doesn't it? A student who's been working on a technique shows the room what they've been drilling in their own time, in their own practice, and then they get feedback or they get challenged or they get encouragement. So their work is witnessed, and in the witnessing, the whole room learns something. So that's the shape of a real dojo: mirrored drilling, live sparring, witnessed work. 3 formats, 3 different learning modes, but it's one integrated training environment. Now, think about most trading education. It's more like a webinar, isn't it? Even what I've been doing to begin with. Somebody shows you their screen. I've shown you my screen. While you watch, you take notes, and you hope that some of it transfers. And it might not, but trading's not something it's got to be something that you do. And things you do get learned by actually doing them in real time, maybe next to someone who's doing them better, not just by watching them being done from a distance. So that's what I really want to focus on with this mentorship. It's doing something different that you won't have in most other areas. We're going to use all 3 of the dojo's formats. And so I want to introduce them so you understand them and where you meet them. So then our expectations are matching. So format 1, what I'm calling mirror sessions. That's where you're trading alongside me. It's where the course's drilling happens. So, every session that we open, open your charts. We're all on the same instrument, gold, whatever, same time frame. As I draw something, you draw something. As I mark something, you mark something. Think as I think. So when I make a decision, what did your hand want to do? Did it do something even before I told you? So that's the invitation that we have in the mirror sessions. So then what happens once everybody shows up and is focused on that? We build the map together. I share my screen. We, for example, start with the gold chart. We build the liquidity pools. We see previous day high, previous day low, sessions, equal levels, trend lines, pools, whatever we're looking for. And as I mark each one on my chart, you actually mark it same time on yours, same tick, same color, same line. So we're seeing and feeling the same thing. We're overlaying the coordinates. If I bring up the Goldback numbers and I highlight the CE numbers, that's what you would do. You got the same indicator on the same chart. So now we're both looking, or all of us are looking at the same calibrated instrument. We might be looking at it from different angles on different screens, but we're looking at the same thing. So then when we wait for the setup, we can do it. We can watch it together. We can talk out loud together, because this is the part that changes everything. It's really cool. Instead of me just showing you a completed setup after the fact, we're waiting for one together in real time, and we're narrating what we see. Hey, look, prices drifting towards the CE. Let's watch out for the shopping candle. GB time, 7 minutes. If it comes early, we're not taking it. If it comes, so you see how we're doing it? You're not learning to spot setups from a highlight reel. You're learning to spot them at the pace they actually appear, which often is nothing like the pace when you watch it back in an edited replay, for example. So then when we're working, we can take the trade or we don't take the trade, because, hey, sometimes the setup presents it and we take it. We take it, the whole group, the whole room takes it live. And sometimes maybe the setup's not quite right and we don't take it, which is just as valuable, because if we pass on the trades that look almost right but don't fit our rules, well, that's a hard skill to progress with on your own, but it's much easier to do in live and real time. So you hear me tell you why I'm taking a trade, why I'm not taking a trade. So you learn the shapes at the same time. And then when we manage it, do we manage everything? Do we manage nothing? Once that trade is placed, we all watch it. We're all doing the same thing. Set it and forget it. Or maybe we are adjusting it at a different level where we're thinking about the break even. And then we can discuss our emotions as we're watching that trade runs. Not just about the trade itself, but what are you thinking? Are you feeling the urge to move the stop? Well, let's talk about it. Yeah, maybe I'm feeling it. So this is where we get those reps. It's easy to tell me to set and forget it. Guys, just set and forget it. That's easy to teach as a rule. But it's hard to experience that alone. But if we're sitting with other traders all experiencing that same itch at the same moment, and we're all genuinely keeping our hands still together, that's transformative. You can't get that just from watching or reading a book. And then once it's happened, we can debrief together. The trade closes. Was it a target or did we get stopped out? So we can talk about what happened. It's not to celebrate a win or mourn a loss, because the asset does what the asset does. But we can audit what we did. Was it a good setup? Did the pullback do what we expected? Where would the next opportunity be? So that's a mirror session. It's the drilling format. Everyone doing the same thing at the same time, and we're learning by parallel action. So there's a piece of teaching craft in this that I want to quickly talk about, because it explains why mirror sessions are non-negotiable and why recorded sessions, no matter how good they are, they can't replicate what happens live. So I just want to explain this. So there's knowledge you can write down, and there's knowledge you can't write down. The knowledge you can write down is called explicit knowledge. It's what we fit in the modules, in checklists. If X does this, then Y does this. It's the rules we follow. Almost everything up to this point in the course has been explicit knowledge, and it's teachable via text and screenshots because I can articulate it. But the knowledge you can't fully write down is called tacit knowledge. That's the split-second recognitions, the, oh, no, not yet instincts, the way you notice how your hand hesitates before a click. So this is the knowledge that separates, for example, a black belt from a white belt who's executing the same technique. And it can't be transmitted by explanation. It can only be transmitted by a shared experience of the same moment. So if you think about every apprentice-based tradition on earth, martial arts, medicine, carpentry, cooking, music, the master and the apprentice, they're working on the same problem at the same time. So the mirror session is going to be the mechanism for this on this course. You open your chart when I open mine. You reach for the mouse when I reach for mine. When I tell you not yet, I'm waiting for the swing to close, and your finger was already hovering, well, now you've just received a piece of my room for instinct that no module, no matter how well written, could ever have handed to you. So that's why the mirror sessions are the payoff. Everything you've earned up to this point makes the mirroring possible. Without the map and the model and the candle vocabulary, you'd just be watching me click buttons. But with them, you're doing what I'm doing, thinking what I'm thinking, and building those 1,000 tiny recognitions that turn a syllable into a syllabus and turns it into a skill. Second session that we're going to focus on, format number 2. I'm calling it the sparring room. Of course I am. Martial arts, why wouldn't it be? So that's sparring under coaching, live pressure under coaching. So the mirror session teaches you the technique. The sparring room teaches you yourself under pressure. Because here's what a sparring room session actually is. All right, let me explain how we break it down. One member volunteers, or I volunteer, one of those members, into the hot seat. Their screen, we share their screen. The market's live, the market's moving, and I guide them through their thinking, through their focus, through their hesitation, while the rest of the room watches and learns. It's not a critique, it's not a test, it's not a performance. It's like a guided, live exploration of what happens in that member's head and in their hands when the market's actually running, and somebody's just helping them notice what they're doing. So how's that going to run as a session? Well, that member goes in the hot seat, opens up the chart, live gold trading, beautiful, right now, the market's doing whatever it's doing. And then I'm going to start asking questions and guiding, real questions, real time, in the sequence that me as a coach would use for myself to guide my own focus. So, what are you looking at right now? Show me your levels. Which ones feel like they're giving you the most weight today? Oh, hang on, you just paused. What made you pause there? What are you looking at? Where's your eye going? Talk me through it. You said you felt like this. So feel like what? What makes this an win A+? What's missing? Hang on, you almost clicked that. What stopped you? So you see what's happening? The member's going to respond live. They're not showing me the finished work. They're showing me their current thinking as it forms with the market moving underneath them. And it's in that live articulation that something pretty cool happens. They discover what they didn't even know they were doing. You can't articulate a thought without knowing the shape of it. So which means when I ask, what specifically stopped you? And then, the member's going to go, they're going to start to answer, and they're going to go, I'm not actually sure why I hesitated. So now that's where they've just discovered a gap in their own understanding that the solo practice would have hidden for months. So the forced articulation live is the drill. And there's a second layer of this. The room, everybody watching learns from watching. Every member who's watching that sparring session is running their own internal answers alongside that hot seat member. So when I ask you a question, which level are you looking at? Every watching member is silently asking themselves the same question about their own chart. So when the hot seat member says, I actually can't tell you why I like this one better, every person watching who's about to say the same thing is just quietly being educated without having to be caught in the hot seat. One member in the seat, everybody else is learning as well. So that's why the reason for this format is probably arguably more valuable per hour than anything else in the course. Because the sparring room reveals a few things. And it's things that solo trading is never going to reveal. Gaps between what you know and what you can do live. Maybe you can recite the syllabus to me perfectly on Sunday, but it's not the syllabus that you're executing at 9:47 on the Monday with the market moving. And it's that gap between the two that's only ever going to show up under pressure. And the sparring room manufactures that pressure in a safe environment where you can see the gap without paying your own account finances for it. So, rationalizations you didn't even know you were making. Members who always follow the plan. Well, there's a fascinating pattern. Under live coaching, well, actually, they often discover they've been quietly loosening the plan in specific little ways that they'd never have noticed alone. But we notice, you notice, everyone starts to notice that gap closes. You have, if you've ever played poker, you know about tells. So you have your own tells. Every trader has physical and verbal tells that reveal what they're actually feeling. I hover my hand over the mouse before I click it. Take a deep breath before I take the trade. I use the word just. I just want to see if those kind of things. So in live coaching, these surface, and then once they surface, it's great because they become an early warning signal that you can catch on yourself for the rest of your career. So if we think about fluency versus knowledge, talking through a live setup at a pace the market runs is a different skill from talking it through on a screenshot afterwards. If we can build up that fluency under time, the time pressure, that's what the sparring room is going to drill. And it's what separates a member from somebody who knows the method from somebody who can speak and apply the method. And it's really hard to discover this at the level of, I'll just read the module again. But it's very discoverable if you get 15 minutes in a hot seat. So, yeah, that's going to build up for some people a bit of anxiety. Oh my God, I've got to show my workings out in front of everybody. Beautiful. So there's a safety that makes it work. Because here's a paradox, I guess, at the heart of the sparring room. And it's what determines whether the format works or destroys itself. The pressure has got to be real, but the consequences must not be real. If the pressure isn't real, if the hot seat's just me of, let's have a friendly walkthrough where I just let you off whatever you're doing, then the format doesn't really teach anything. You could do that on your own solo journey. But if the consequences are real, if members leave the hot seat and they feel judged and exposed or humiliated, well, then the format's going to collapse because nobody's ever going to volunteer again, are they? So we want you to bring your genuine struggles to this. So that's why I have 3 rules in the sparring room. Rule number 1, the hot seat's just a place of discovery. It's not performance. You're not there to be right. You're there to discover what's actually happening in your trading. Being wrong live, out loud, with everybody watching is precisely the point. Because it's the fastest way to close a gap that you couldn't see alone. Rule number 2, I'll lead the coaching and the room just watches. Now, the people who are watching can post reflections, they can ask their own questions, and they can learn actively, but the room doesn't just pile in on that person who's in the hot seat. So I'll do the direct coaching because I can calibrate the pressure in real time and back off if I need to, if somebody, genuinely needs a breath. And the third rule that I have, what happens in the sparring room stays in the sparring room. The specific things that members discover about themselves, their tells, their rationalizations, their moments of caught in the moment, they're not used against them somewhere else in the community, ever. So any member who breaks that rule just loses their standing in the room immediately. Yeah, they're not in the room anymore. And this is non-negotiable because it's the room's safety that's the room's most valuable asset. So if you follow these 3 rules, the sparring rule becomes the closest thing to a martial arts sparring floor that a trading community's ever built. If we break any one of them, it's going to collapse, so we can't break them. So this comes from something like a tradition in the martial arts called randori. Okay? And the reason I want to say it is because there's some members that like to know where our practices come from. So this, in the martial arts tradition, randori literally means chaos taking or free practice. It's the format where students step out of drilling into live, unscripted exchanges and then guided by an instructor with a room watching and learning. And Randori's existed for centuries because it works. It works because it does something no other training format does. It lets students discover what they know and what they don't know in the only environment that ultimately matters, the live one, under pressure, but held in a container safe enough that discovery is actually welcome. So the sparring room is our Randori. Same tradition, same mechanism, same reason it works. And then format 3, the sharing wall, the witnessed work. So some learning needs live pressure and other learning just needs quiet reflection with witnesses. So I give you homework, and then when you post your homework, that's the sharing wall. The sharing wall runs between sessions, and it's kind of exactly what it sounds like, isn't it? You as members bring your finished work to the room. You get it witnessed. You receive structured feedback, but it's not that live under pressure feedback. It's not in the moment decision. It's retrospectively comes with a calm that comes from the market being closed and the trade being done. So it feels a bit more relaxed. So things like you might share your annotated chart from a recent trade. Maybe it's your journal page from the last week. Maybe it's your setup ratings, which shelves you've been taking. Maybe it's your toolkit as it currently stands. But we want to understand it's the material that's already happened. The pressure of the moment's gone, and analysis is going to benefit from more eyes looking at it and calmer minds. So we all can provide some feedback. So let's talk about the feedback. If a member shares on that on that wall, I don't want the room just going, "Oh, good job," or you got it wrong." The sharing wall runs on 3 moves as like a response pattern that I've been modeling from day one, and is what I'm going to be holding as the room's default culture. So rule number 1, specific positivity. Not just, "Hey, nice work." But hey, the way you sat through that pullback on that trade number 14 without reaching in and pushing that stop button, now there's genuine, positive, specific feedback. Second rule, challenge that respects. Not, "Oh, you should have done it my way," but hey, I noticed you rated your 4 setups A plus. My honest read would be maybe from your data, maybe one of those wasn't an A plus. So tell me, what's your definition of A plus? What's that look like right now? So now the challenge is on the thinking, not the person. And the third rule, growth that transmits. Here's what I noticed that you're doing that I hadn't even thought to try. The way you screenshotted the 1 hour chart alongside the 1 minute, and I love how you marked up the fair value gaps. I'm going to steal that. That was awesome. So when one member's room 2 discovery becomes another member's room 2 accelerator, that's awesome. The whole room progresses faster than any individual could. So that's the culture. Specific positivity, challenge that respects, and growth that transmits. So again, we want to learn that 3-move pattern and use it every time you respond to a wall post. Do that, the community stays healthy without needing me to get involved and enforce it. When new members join, they learn the pattern by osmosis because we've already all agreed on how we should be treating each other's work. But again, the one rule that's super important, same as the sparring room, but worth stating separately because it applies just as much here, nobody's data gets weaponized. If I'm brave enough to share, "Hey, look at my last 30 losing trades" with the wall, and the response is anything other than the 3-move pattern, I have to shut that down. The wall works because it's safe to bring that type of flawed work here. The safety is what makes members willing to share the material that actually needs the rest of us looking at it. So we have to protect it if the room's future, as if the room futures depends on it, because it kind of does, doesn't it? So the three formats, how do they fit together? Three different formats, three different learning outcomes, one integrated dojo. Mirror sessions, drilling. You do what I do at the same time, but you're on your own chart. Everybody learning by parallel action at the pace of the market. This is where the techniques get transmitted. Sparring room, live pressure testing under coaching. One member in the hot seat, market running, help guide them. We're witnessing it all together, discovery of ourselves in real time in a safe container. That's where we start to build up the fluidity and fluency. The sharing wall, we put our retrospective work up and so people can witness it. Members are bringing their finished material to the room, receive the 3-move response, absorb the feedback nice and calmly, because this is where reflection gets sharpened. Every serious dojo on earth has all three: drill, spar, review. Every serious apprenticeship has all three. You work alongside, you work under supervision, and then your work's reviewed by your teacher. So the course has all three, and they work because they're all present in the right proportions, but they're all doing distinct jobs. We skip any one of them, and the learning is going to suffer. Mirror without sparring, well, you're going to know the technique, but you're going to freeze under pressure. Sparring without the mirror, well, you'd have pressure, but you don't have the technique to apply it. Wall without either, and you'd be reviewing work that never got the chance to be sharpened by your live exposure to the market. All three together, that's what a dojo is. So within a week, there's a rhythm to it that you'll pick up over time. Your solo work, every trading day, you run the syllabus, the white belt entries, you mark your levels, you wait for setups, you take your valid trades, you journal them. The reps. Then we have the mirror sessions. You attend live, chart opened, alongside me, drilling format. That's where the technique transmits. Sparring room, you attend live. Sometimes you'll be the one watching. Sometimes you'll be the one in the hot seat. But we're all learning from the live discovery. Sometimes you'll volunteer for the seat yourself. Sometimes I'll volunteer you. The sharing wall, ongoing, synchronous. I can't. What's the word? In synchrony. Let's call it that. Between sessions, members post work for us all to witness and for us all to give feedback. So you can post, you can respond, because both of those actions teach. And then I recommend a weekly review. I'm going to talk about the journal soon, but let's say every Sunday you do your journal, your own review of your own week off screen. So this is where you start to understand what your reps during the week have actually produced. Then we have a grading review, maybe every 100 trades, and you'll see that when you see the journal. When trade 100 lands, you can stop, you can grade. I've got the declaration. Is my toolkit better? Am I ready to move up to the next level? So think about what this rhythm's producing. You're never really learning alone, and you're never really learning without a room to reflect. Every mode of learning that's ever been useful for developing a skill is present in the proportions that the skill actually needs. So this is the architecture of every proper apprenticeship on earth. And I've just taken it, put my martial arts spin on it, and adapted it to the trading floor and to a modern digital community. Hey, and while I think about the community, let's just mention one thing kind of that I think is worth mentioning, because it's what's going to separate this course from the trading community model that most members, if you've ever been a part of another group, have discovered. Most trading communities are just chat rooms. Members hang out, post charts, argue about market direction. They share memes. They occasionally post trades. It's social, it's sociable, and it can be enjoyable, but it doesn't teach, because the chat room has no drilling, no sparring, no witness work, no protocol, no shared thought process, no transmission mechanism. It's more like a coffee shop than a dojo. So the community has a coffee shop inside it. There's a general area, we can chat in there, casual conversation. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That's the human warmth that every community needs. Enjoy that, sure. But the coffee shop isn't where the course comes alive. The three dojo formats are. And it's the difference between a member who can treat this as a chat room and a member who treats it as a dojo. That's going to be visible in their belt progression. So the invitation to all of you is show up on the mat. Bring your chart, bring your journal, bring your work, bring your questions. Sometimes drill alongside me, sometimes step into the hot seat, sometimes bring work to the wall, sometimes just witness and watch. Let the room see you struggle at the current level that you are in your belt syllabus. And let yourself see other members struggle at theirs. That's how a dojo works. That's how mastery gets transmitted. That's what you should have signed up for. That's how we're taking it forwards. That's how we train. That's how we become effective. And that's how we build a skill that can genuinely improve everything that we do with our trading. So I'm really hoping you understand where I'm taking this and why I'm taking it here. And it's going to challenge you sometimes. It's going to make you anxious sometimes. It's going to build pressure into you. That's kind of the point. Because if you can't do it with somebody guiding you, how are you going to be able to do it in a real market with nobody there watching you? That's when you're going to do your old habits. That's when you're going to make big mistakes. That's how you're going to kill your account. But if we can learn to understand how we do things, why we do things, and be guided to do them better, pretty sure that's a way that we're going to improve. So with that, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.